right, so again, welcome to today's session. We're going to go over the fundamentals of ESL tutoring today. And then just a quick introduction about myself. I am the volunteer tutor recruiter. I'm also an ESL tutor trainer, and then I also do ESL teaching at my agency. Prior to working with people in the community, I worked at a lot of colleges and primarily working with ESL students that are trying to get into American universities, whether that be undergraduate programs or graduate programs. So for our agenda today, I want to talk about our organization, the Delaware County Literacy Council, and what we do. I want to go over the scope of adult education in the United States as a whole and the needs of our adult ESL learners, particularly in the Philadelphia region. And then I'm going to talk about student-centered learning and why that's important, especially for ESL learners. And then there is a practice assignment that we'll do together. And this will give you an opportunity to practice using our Google Classroom, which you will be doing over the next 3 weeks before we meet again on the 27th of March. And then I'll talk about, the contents that will be in the Google Classroom. And so the mission statement is really just to get a little accustomed to the Google Classroom and submitting an assignment. So I have two main objectives for you today. The first one is for you to be able to identify some strategies to make your instruction more student-centered. And then the second objective is for you to be able to navigate our Google Classroom modules so that you'll be ready for the next few weeks to turn in assignments and complete the modules. And today is not the final day that I'll be in contact with you. So if you need anything, if you need troubleshooting, any type of support, feel free to email me, feel free to write in the Google Classroom, and I'll be there to support you throughout this process. All right, so we're going to do a little icebreaker. Because we have such a large audience today, I'm going to spare you all the trouble of listening to everyone's introductions. I'm sure you've done that quite a bit, at Zoom meetings. So I'm going to put you into smaller groups. And then you can introduce yourselves, you can provide your name, and then also what your first post-COVID plan will be. All right, so I can start. My name is Robert Lee, as you all may know. And then my first post-COVID plan, I want to travel to Italy with some friends of mine and rent out a house and spend a few weeks there. All right, so I'm going to put you in breakout rooms. You're going to have 4 to 5 people in each room. So please introduce yourselves to those participants.
It's something else.
All right, welcome back. Welcome back to the main session. You should see the Delaware County Literacy Council up on your screen. If not, again, that's okay. I'm recording everything, so you'll be able to watch it later as well. So we are a literacy council, but what is literacy? What does that mean? Usually when we think about literacy, we think about reading, writing, and speaking, right? But there is a purpose, there's a function to that reading, writing, and speaking. And then the function is to be able to accomplish something, whether that be on the job, in the family of the individual, or in society. And that's how we like to think about literacy, not just to be able to read, write, and speak in English, but to be able to do it so that the learner can fulfill some purpose, right? And so at our literacy council, that purpose tends to be either getting the learner into an academic track, maybe for higher education, or to complete their high school equivalency, or to get a job. And so at DCLC, all of our programming is free for our learners. And that's because of volunteers like you, all right? We use lots of volunteers, and that helps ensure that our programs are free and accessible for everybody. We were founded in 1975 by a group of volunteers in the community that decided to band together and help out other people in the community. These are some important people in our organization that you'll be in touch with later. The person on the left, her name is Karen. She's the tutor coordinator. So she'll be sending you emails, making sure that you're matched with a student. If you have any trouble, you can reach out to her. She can also direct you to resources. She'll send you a book by the end of the training that you can use with your learner. So you'll be in contact with Karen quite a bit. Kim is our student support person. So if your student has behavioral issues or need help with anything that's not academic related, for example, like child care services, you can reach out to Kim and she can direct you. Jen on the right here, she is our lead instructor. So she creates the curriculum for all the teachers. So she's someone that you can talk to for instructional help. You can also talk to me as well. And then Peter, top right over here, he is a volunteer that's been with us for a really long time. And he does everything. He volunteers. He fixes the building sometimes. So he's a pretty handy guy. In terms of our programming, we basically have 3 different types of programming. We have what's called our ABE track, and that's for adult basic education. Those students tend to want to get their GED or some type of high school equivalency, so that they can eventually maybe get a job or a better job. We also have our ESL program. That tends to be for immigrants who need help developing their English speaking skills. And they might have lots of formal educational experiences. They might have little formal educational experiences. So it really depends. Currently, a lot of them are parents of the K-12 system. So they want to be in our classes to support their children. And then we also have what's called the IELCE track. This one is a more specialized track. And it stands for Integrated English Language and Civics Education. So it's very civics focused. And the students that are in this track, they have a very specific goal, and that's to become a home health aide or a certified nurse aide. And so once they finish this program, they're placed in another program that's very job specific. And now I want to talk a little bit about the need for adult education in general in the United States. We know that more than 36 million adults in the US cannot read, write, or do basic math above the third grade level. We know that lots of programs like ours are struggling with long student waiting lists, and less than 10% of adults in need are actually receiving services. And this might even be higher now, since a lot of adults who don't have access to technology or who aren't able to use technology can't receive our services or services of other adult education organizations because we're all doing this remotely. We've noticed that there has been a lot fewer lower level students that are enrolling in our programs. And we think that that's because they're not able to use technology to access our programs. We know that there's a price tag to all of this. Economically, it costs us $225 billion in loss of productivity. And then we also know that it's cyclical. That means that children with parents who have low literacy levels also tend to be amongst the lowest literacy levels themselves. And that results in poor grades, behavioral issues, dropout rates, and so forth. And now I want to talk more about some of the ESL learners in our Philadelphia metro area, the students we primarily serve. So in this area, we know that 30% had little schooling, 30% of the ESL speakers had little schooling, but at the same time, 30% also had college degrees. So you can think of the outliers as a bit further out than the average US born resident. They have diverse educational experiences. And so you can have someone who, say, had a middle school language education in their home country. They might come to the United States. Maybe they get a job as a waiter or some type of customer-facing job, and they're able to develop their oral English skills quite a bit. But then at the same time, because they're not, reading or writing much, maybe their print language skills are very limited. All right. But you could also have someone like in the green row right here. You can also have someone who, got their master's degree from their home country. So they're very educated, but maybe they never had a chance to speak in English. So maybe their oral language skills are at the beginner level, but maybe they had the opportunity to read a lot of English as a part of their education. So their print literacy skills are really advanced. And so this is just to say that we can't typecast our ESL learners. They can be very different. And just because their speaking skills are limited does not necessarily mean their writing skills are limited or their educational experiences are limited. And vice versa. It could be very limited. In terms of their ethnic origins, this is a wheel of some of our students. This is from 2017, 2018. But demographics are still very, very similar. You can see that there's a lot of students from lots of different countries. This is a snapshot of my classroom when we were meeting in person, obviously. And so you can see I had students from Argentina, Bulgaria, China, Ecuador, France, Italy, Morocco, Spain, Ukraine, Vietnam, in just one classroom. So it's a very diverse group of students. Most of them had limited educational experiences. However, 2 did have graduate degrees. And they all shared this in common. They were all parents of students in the K-12 system. And even though they are so diverse, there is one consistent trend. And that trend is that the ESL population is growing exponentially. And so we'll need more tutors to support these students. And so now I'm going to give you a chance to think about, how you're going to get to understand your learner and get to know your learner. Because like I said, our ESL students are very diverse. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to put you into breakout groups again. New groups this time, so you get to meet some more people. And you're going to enter this link, or at least one person will enter this link, and I'll post this in the chat. And I'm going to show you what it looks like. Once you enter this link, you're going to see these 3 different scenarios. You're going to imagine yourself as a learner, a language learner. And so the first scenario, you're going to Turkey for a month-long vacation. What might be your immediate language learning needs and goals? In the second scenario, all right, different person now, you get a new job with a healthcare company that's based in Turkey. Some of your colleagues don't understand English. So in that case, what might be your immediate Turkish learning needs and goals? All right. And then in the third scenario, you're moving to Turkey with your 10-year-old child because you will be telecommuting with your company in the United States. You can continue speaking English with your colleagues. However, your child will be enrolled in a Turkish-speaking school. So think about, in that case, what might be your language learning needs and goals. And so I'm going to give you about 10 minutes in your new breakout rooms to discuss these questions. And I will post the link in the chat. Was I successful in putting you into new breakout rooms?
Yes.
Or,
Yes.
good. Wanted to make sure that you had an opportunity to kind of meet different people. All right. So let's discuss what you guys talked about. I heard some really great things that you guys mentioned. One group talked about in scenario 3 how it depends on the age of the child, what grade they're in, and that can really change the content that you're teaching to the learner. One group mentioned using learning apps, so teaching the learner how to use some learning apps, and I can see that being useful for all 3 of these, especially with something like going on vacation and you have to kind of learn very quickly. And then another group mentioned very specific vocabulary skills. I can see how that'd be very useful in scenario 2, where you have to use very specialized vocabulary in the healthcare field. So why don't you guys share with the rest of us what you talked about? So let's go over scenario 3. Would somebody volunteer and tell us what they talked about in their group for scenario 1?
Well, the things you talk about, the things that a person needs for going on a month-long vacation in a new country are pretty transferable across countries. They're pretty universal. You need to be able to navigate in the country. You need to know how to ask directions and understand them. You need accommodations. You need travel information. The important sites, the cultural differences that stand out that you need to know to be considered polite. Money, What were some of the other things? Food, asking about food and understanding it. I think weather, we didn't talk about that, but also religion, religious customs. Those are things that so there, we thought maybe doing role plays with questions, with dialogues in each of these different situations would be useful for student.
Mm-hmm. Great, great. Loved all the various things you mentioned there, including culture. Talk about giving students some cultural competence, talking about customs, because that's super important too. You know, not just being able to speak and know the language, but to know the norms of a society. That's super important. So thanks for sharing. What about in scenario 2? Can someone else volunteer what they talked about for scenario 2?
I was just thinking that it would be useful, since there's kind of a two-way issue. If I'm new to the country and I don't speak much of the language, and they don't speak much of my language, particularly in the healthcare industry, that can be a big problem. So I thought it would be useful to try to map out scenarios that would likely occur in which we'd need to be able to communicate quickly and easily, and to try to focus on those areas in my own learning, and so that I made sure I was prepared.
Great, great. What might one of those problem scenarios look like, Jay?
Well, I'm not sure what my job is. If I'm an EMT or something, that might be, you know, what do we do when the patient is, you know, they need a crash cart or something, you know, whatever. I'm not an EMT, but you know, in an emergency situation, there's probably a number of things that I'm going to need to be able to communicate about. So I would need to definitely focus in on those things. If I'm a billing person, you know, that might be a little different.
Great, great. Yeah.
I think sorry, go ahead.
No, what were you saying?
I was just going to say, I think it's important to, like in number 3 also, to immerse yourself and not use, if you're in another culture, it's important to not use expat communities and things like that as a crutch, and to try to immerse yourself fully in the culture and language.
Great, thanks for sharing. Love what you mentioned about like the specificity of the job and those functions, and you know how that you know, even within the healthcare company, like your job role can have very different language demands. So yeah, thanks for sharing. And then in scenario 3, anybody like to volunteer scenario 3? Julie?
Sure. So moving to Turkey with your 10-year-old child, and so you can continue to speak English with your colleagues, but we're putting a child in a school and that situation, and definitely want to see about getting this child a tutor to help along, to see what services are available at the school, if any, to set, and when a tutor, not just for the child, but for me also. So because we both need to learn together, to set a time every day that this is our time to get books, easy reading books that the two of us can read together, and to do any kind of support, and to remind my 10-year-old child that because you can't speak this language that you've been thrust into doesn't mean you're stupid, doesn't mean that you're not capable, but this is something that's hard for us and we're going to learn it together, and that they can do it.
Great. I love what you mentioned about like learning with the child. So being able to kind of support the child as they're learning is super important. Great. Well, thanks everybody for sharing. Hopefully this gives you an idea of, how specific language learning needs and goals could be. And there isn't really a one size fits all approach when we're teaching a language to a learner. And, by tailoring your content to the learner's needs and goals, it's way more motivational because it's more authentic to that learner and they can use it right away, which is super important for adults because we're very practical learners. We're not like children. Children can wait a little bit before they see like the immediate impact of what they're learning, especially if you're kind of forced into a school and you're just learning what the school is providing for you. With adults, we really need to have that practical value as soon as possible. All right. So that leads us to thinking more about student-centered learning, right? And the activity that we just did, that is a student-centered learning approach to thinking about what we're teaching our students. When we talk about student-centered learning, we often think about the layout of a classroom. We usually think about, this is, this on the left here, that's more emblematic of student-centered learning. Whereas on the right, that is not as related to student-centered learning. And it doesn't necessarily have anything to do with the layout of the classroom. You can still have student-centered learning in a one-to-one environment. Even, with what you see on the right there, that classroom layout can still foster student-centered learning. What I think is a better way to think about student-centered learning is that it's a philosophy, specifically of the teacher and learner relationship. Thinking about how you as an instructor views the learner, and then what role you play in that relationship. And so, if you're trying to be more student-centered or learner-centered, you're thinking about the student before you start teaching the student. The language use is authentic to the learner, and not just we're going to learn because we want to learn grammar today. There is a use for the grammar that the learner can immediately apply, right? The student has opportunities to interact and practice. Whereas in a teacher-centered model, the instructor is the one who's talking, who's providing the knowledge, and then the student is just receiving it. In the learner-centered model, students have opportunities to think about their own learning progress and be able to evaluate it. So the teacher is providing the learner with those tools. Whereas in a teacher-centered model, the instructor is the one who evaluates, and then the student receives the evaluation. And so, I'm not necessarily saying that there is no room for teacher-centered instruction anywhere, in education. Obviously, teacher-centered instruction can be more efficient in like larger settings, like a lecture hall. But with language learning, instruction really needs to be learner-centered for language learning to work. And that's because, we have to think about our learners first, think about their experiences, think about, what they already know, what they want to know before we start, teaching them. Instead of thinking about us first, thinking about what we know, thinking about what our experiences are, and then imparting all of that to our learner. So I think that this, on the left here, is the best way to approach language instruction, thinking about our students first before we start instructing. And why is it especially important for ESL learners?
Because that's how you learn language.
Can you elaborate on that?
You have to listen, speak, read, and write, and not have them separate, but have them all together, and dealing with real situations that the person will meet, and also their situations based on the purposes for them for coming to you for instruction.
Great, thank you. Can you remind us of your name again? It says Chris on your.
Well, yeah. I don't understand that, but my name's Pat. Yeah,
Pat.
My husband programmed the computer when he set up this program.
Great, thank you. Jay, you also raised your hand.
Yeah, sorry. I was just going to say something similar to Pat. I think if you're an ESL learner, you have a really immediate need to be functional in the language, whereas we, in a foreign language class in school or something, learning grammar forms and so on, we can afford to be theoretical and build our knowledge hierarchically, but the ESL student has an immediate need for things that relate to what they need to get done in their daily lives and their jobs and things like that. So
Great. Loved what both of you, Pat and Jay, mentioned, talking about the functionality of language. And Pat, you mentioned integrating different skills like speaking and listening, reading, and writing. Great. All right, so it seems like I'm working with a lot of expert educators here, which is awesome. All right, so now I want to give you an opportunity to integrate what we just talked about into your mission statement. And this is just a practice assignment, so you don't have to write like a full-length paper on this, although you are more than welcome to. You just have to do like one paragraph. One paragraph is perfectly fine. What you're going to do is you're going to answer these two questions. One, how will you find out your students' needs or goals? And two, what can you do to foster a student-centered learning environment in a tutoring session? You can either write this out first and then type it out into our Google Classroom, or you can go directly into our Google Classroom and type it out there. And so when you go to our Google Classroom, I'm actually going to go from the very beginning. This is the link, right? classroom.google.com. Find our class. Our class is called DCLC Fundamentals of ESL Tutoring, and you'll see that there's a time there, March 2021. And if you click on that, you're going to see this screen. This is not the most useful way to look at the modules. The most useful way is if you click on classwork, and everything is sorted from top to bottom. And so you'll see for your screen, you'll see at the very top, introduction to course. And you'll see our orientation slides from today over here. All right, so if you want to review the slides, you just click on this, click on the slides, and then it'll pop up. For our first assignment, that is the mission statement. All right, so you're just going to click on that and then click view assignment. So you can either type it into the class comment box, but there's another way to do it. You can also submit it as a Word document. That way is a little bit more tricky, but it saves everything for you. And if you want to see how that's done, there are steps on how to do that in guides for navigating Google Classroom. If you click submitting assignments, you'll see that there is a way to create a Word document. So instead of typing in the comment box, you can click create, click docs, and once you click the docs icon, you have to open up the document. So that's step 3, is to open up that document. And then you can start typing into the document that you opened up. And when you're done typing it, you have to go back and click turn in. Otherwise, I won't be able to see the document unless you click turn in. All right, so this is the more difficult way to do it. There are some pros to this in that it saves everything that you write. If you're not comfortable doing this, you can always just go into the comment box and type it into the comment box. All right, so I'm gonna give you guys about 20 minutes to do this, and then you can also take a 10-minute break afterwards. So a total of 30 minutes. So we'll reconvene at 1:30. All right. And if you need help, I will be here and I can help you out as well.
So what do we do?
So, Robert, this is Mary. Can you
Yes.
just take me to step 1? And I think once I'm there, I'll figure it out moving forward.
Yeah, so step 1 is go to the mission statement assignment in our Google Classroom. And I can actually copy and paste that link into our chat.
Okay.
Yeah, because
And I want to make sure, did everybody join our Google Classroom already? Because if you haven't, then you'd have to join first. Let me make sure that everyone's joined. Mary, I see that you've joined, so you should be able to access it.
Yeah. So I think I'll do the easy add a class comment.
Okay, yeah, that's perfectly fine, perfectly fine.
Okay.
For those who haven't joined yet, I sent you a link in your email. You can either access it in your email or you can manually join right now by going to classroom.google.com and then pasting this class code.
Oh,
All right, everybody, welcome back. Welcome back. If you weren't able to submit it, no worries. Just make sure that you try to submit it sometime this weekend, just so that you are familiar with the Google Classroom and how to turn in assignments. If you've never used it before, no worries. It becomes pretty easy. It's pretty intuitive once you've seen it enough. And then again, I'm always here to help. So if you need help, just email me and I'll try my best to support you. I can always schedule a Zoom session with you as well to show you how to navigate our Google Classroom. I also have 2 documents in there to help you troubleshoot. So once you go into our Google Classroom and you see Introduction to Course, right below it, there's a section called Guides for Navigating Google Classroom. So if you click on that, there are 2 documents. The first one is on how to review the topics, and the second one is on how to submit assignments. All right, so if you click on Reviewing Topics, it will take you from start to finish. So the first step is to go to the website. It shows you how to do that. Second step, again, is to click on classwork. Whenever you're lost in Google Classroom, just click on classwork and I'll bring you back to the home page. And that's also true for the phone app as well. You can also do these assignments on a phone. And you can find the classwork link at the bottom in the middle of the phone. On a computer, it's at the top, right in the middle. And then in terms of reviewing assignments, there are basically 2 components to each topic area. There are slides that you can look at, right? So once you go through all the slides and you study the content in the slides, there are reflection activities at the very bottom of each topic area. And then they have due dates, and that's how you know that those are the reflection activities. There's 1 quiz on here. I think it's about like 5 questions, so it's not very long. The rest of them are just question prompts for you to answer. So if you can write 1 paragraph, that's a perfect length for a response. So you don't have to go into too much detail. 1 paragraph reflection is perfectly okay. And so yeah, this shows you how to review all the slides in the modules. For each one, you just open it up and click on the slides. If you need to submit an assignment, right? Again, there are 2 ways to do it, right? There's the easier way where you just submit it as a comment, and I've seen some of you do that already, and that's perfectly fine. I'm totally okay with that. Just whichever works for you, right? The other way, if you want to submit as a document, this also shows you how to do that as well. Right, and you guys had a chance to see this earlier. And if you're not sure if you turned it in, just send me an email and I can take a look. I'll also be following along as you're doing these. So I'll be in correspondence with you throughout this process. And then in terms of like what to do first, just start from the top and work your way to the bottom. Because that's how it's organized. So as long as you do that, you'll be fine. Right now, you can see the theory topics. By Monday, a bunch of the other ones will open up, and you'll see some of the other modules as well. I'll actually show you. They're all the practice modules. So in the practice modules, there are more videos that you can watch, and I find that to be the most helpful when I was teaching and thinking about teaching. I go back to these videos all the time because they're such phenomenal examples of how to instruct. So there are basically 4 sections in the practice modules. There's assessments, teaching strategies, the 4 skills, and then lesson planning. All right. You'll be able to see that again, not right now, but you'll be able to see that in a few days. And at the very, very bottom, there are some resources and materials. I'll upload the resources and materials after you guys complete the modules, after our next session. So I get that question a lot, like, will you guys have your own resources, or do you guys have to develop resources? We have a ton of resources for you. They're on our website. I'm gonna send you links, different videos that you can watch, if you want to, after this training. So you're not going to be by yourself. You're not going to be alone. We will help you gather resources. And then if you're ever not sure about when something is due, the nice thing about Google Calendar is that it's synced with your Google account, your Gmail account. And so it will send you an email when something needs to be completed. So you can look at your email and check, or you can click on assignment due dates right here and open up this document. All right. And then these are the assignment due dates. Okay. Again, 1 paragraph response for all of these is fine. All right. So don't think that you have to do a ton of work for this. I know you guys have other things that you need to do, so 1 paragraph is totally fine. And then these are suggested due dates. If you are a bit late, no worries. You can always catch up, do them later. And even if you can't complete all of them before our next session in 3 weeks, just let me know. As long as you complete, these at some point, as long as it's not like next year or something, maybe like a week or 2 after our next training, that's totally fine as well. And so, yeah, those are the due dates. And so as for our next steps, make sure, I think that most of you have already joined our Google Classroom, except for Pat. Has anybody else not joined so I can follow up and send you an email? Has anybody else not joined? All right. If you haven't, please email me and I will help you join our classroom. Okay. And then you're going to do the modules in our Google Classroom. And then finally, come back to our face-to-face session. That's on the 27th of March. All right, so make sure you block that out in your calendar. It'll be at the same time. We'll use the same link. Sometimes this link glitches a little bit, so it'll bring you to this session. So if you don't see anybody, just close it and then copy and paste the same link. Refresh your Zoom, and it'll bring you back back to our session. All right. So for our final session, we're going to work together. You'll have an opportunity to work in groups, and you're going to build a lesson plan. I'm going to give you a scenario learner, and you're going to take what you've learned from the Google modules and write out a sample lesson plan with your group members. All right. We're going to talk about using Zoom because we're currently meeting with our learners through Zoom. So that's something we'll explore. And if you need further support, I'm going to schedule a one-to-one session with each person just to make sure that you can use Zoom and to give you an opportunity to schedule a meeting through Zoom. And if you already know how to do that, then it's going to be super easy, super fast. And then I'm also going to give you some resources. So this is one of the resources that we use. And so yeah, that's our final session agenda. So today go back to our objectives here. We've talked about strategies to make your instruction more student-centered, and we also looked at how to navigate our Google Classroom modules. Are there any final questions, comments, concerns before we end for today?
Yeah, when do we meet, like our like when do we get assigned student?
Yeah, great question. I will talk more about that during our next session. You'll be matched with a learner through Karen. Karen's the tutor coordinator, and it depends on when the students are enrolled, because we do ongoing enrollments every few months. We just enrolled some learners at the end of February, so I think our next enrollment is going to be in April. So Karen will likely reach out to you sometime like mid-April, late April, and give you the contact information for your learner.
Thank you.
So I'm just wondering, I mean, I'll find out, but how much background information will we have about the learner before we first meet with them?
Yeah, not a ton. You know, you'll get the information that we'll be able to get. So we asked them briefly about their interests in learning, you know, but sometimes they fill out things like I want to learn English to communicate, right? Which is not very specific. So during your first meeting with them, that's going to give you an opportunity to get to know them a little bit more and to learn more about, you know, their goals and needs.
Okay.
We do test them before we match you with the learner. So you'll have an opportunity, you'll get a glimpse of where they're at, their language learning level. You know, whether they're a beginner, an intermediate student, or an advanced student. So you'll know that, and you'll know, you know, their demographic information, like, you know, their age and things like that. But in terms of like there's, you know, more specific learning goals, you're going to have to find that out yourself.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I have a quick question. How often are you meeting with the student, and then how long does the student make a commitment for, you know, to receive the ESL tutoring?
Yeah, that's a great question. When we enroll our students, we want them to be enrolled for at least one entire session, which is usually about like 2 or 3 months. But most students actually they stay on for longer, because 2 to 3 months is not a long time to learn a language, right? And in terms of meeting, we ask that the tutors and learners meet, because it's remote. We ask that you meet between 1 to 3 hours each week. And you can break that up. You can do 2 sessions, an hour and a half each, or an hour each, or you can do 1 longer session. So, and it's totally up to you. And obviously the learner as well. So depends on your availability and their availability. Great. All right. Before we leave, I just want to make sure that I have everyone's correct names, so that I can take attendance. If your name isn't in the Zoom profile box, could you just let me know what your actual name is? So I know Chris, you're Pat. Okay. All right then. So if you don't have any questions right now, that's fine. You can always email me if you have questions down the line. If you need troubleshooting support, again, feel free to email me, because this is my job. This is what I do. Don't feel like you're pestering me or anything like that. You can also always write in our Google Classroom if you need support. So I'll be able to see that as well. And so, yeah, so thank you so much for coming to our training session today. It was wonderful getting a chance to meet with everybody. I love that, you were able to take some time out of your Saturday to come and join us. Really, really appreciate that. So thank you so much. You should all have my contact information, but in case you don't, this is my contact information. And so have a wonderful weekend. I will see you in our Google Classroom.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Do we have to leave?
Yes, you may leave now.
All right, thank you.
I just wanted to stay on in case anybody had some questions.
When we work with the students, so are we working through Zoom?
Currently, yes. Once things open back up, you have the opportunity to work with them in person.
Yeah, that would work best for me. I'm getting my inoculations. Yeah, because so will we be using Google Classroom with the student?
No, you don't have to. Google Classroom is just something that we're using for the training.
Oh, good. Yeah, yeah, because my husband says it's much too complicated for me, but you know, I'll try my best.
Mhm.
Because I really have trouble with technology, but I can use Zoom.
Yeah, no worries. You know, this is a learning experience for all of us. I'm just glad that you were, you know, able to come and join us for today.
Okay, well, thank you. I'll send the assignment, and you know, I'll try to get to use Google Classroom, and you know, if I have trouble, I'll contact you through email. Thanks
Okay.
a lot for your help and understanding.
Wonderful.
Right.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Joan, for your kind words.
Thank you. Bye.